I'm Garrett McQueen.
I'm Scott Blankenship.
And this is Triloquy, true and real stories from the fringes of classical music. Scott, an extra blessed episode of Opus of Triloquy today. We have a very special guest. We went to church in preparation. We have a lot to talk about today. But as that church service that we attended over at Pilgrim Baptist started with a testimony, you and I have to give a quick testimony over some of our latest weekend activities. We went to see the Joker.
Just Joker.
Finally.
Just Joker.
It's just called Joker.
Yep.
Okay. You have more, how can I say this politely? You have a larger history, a larger track record of the franchise that is the Batman movies and all that sort of thing. So for you, how did this one stack up?
I was prepared to not like it because, for me, Heath Ledger set the standard. I don't like any of the campy versions that came out of the Joker in years prior. The television show, I never sat and watched the TV show with.
So did you consider it campy before the Heath Ledger? Because that, with that reiteration of Batman, the Dark Knight
that was
trilogy.
Serious.
Yeah, that's when we got into the grungy,
and that is the way that it should be, like the Frank Miller graphic novel.
Sure, yeah.
That is the way I thought that it should be done. And we started to talk about it a little bit last night. I think that Heath Ledger represents the Joker who is comfortable in his mental illness. He has embraced it and is living his best life with it. Whereas Joaquin Phoenix is just beginning to grapple with who he is.
It's so interesting that you say living your best life, because what I jotted down here on my piece of paper is freedom to live. And it seems like, and if you don't want any spoilers or anything, just fast forward ahead. It seemed like Joaquin Phoenix was the character was slowly just breaking away from some of the rules that he felt like he had to follow in his everyday. Whether that was explaining his condition to people, the obligation of taking care of your mother, and
That's
just
huge.
trying to do the right thing all along the way, and then he finally just broke out of all of that and became completely free, for lack of a better word.
There's a long history of that sort of trope going into the criminal mastermind.
Yeah.
It's just them and their mother. You can go all the way back to Psycho and find that, that you come out a little flawed and blinkered.
Yeah.
If you're shut in and only have one parent, and maybe that parent isn't working with a full deck.
Yeah, right. And because we're going to be speaking with a man of the cloth here soon, it's best that we be our most honest selves today. So I'm going to ask you, just like Joker, Arthur, slowly evolved into Joker and lived his truth and became this, monster, which, in itself is sort of, subjective, I suppose. But do you see a reality in which the manifestation of your truth is as raw as that, as violent, or as I don't know, I'm not quite sure the word I'm looking for, because after we left the theater to see Joker, we were kind of drawing comparisons between that movie and Fight Club, and how the way you see the world and the way you want to react to it finally manifests in this way. Do you see yourself ever being able to break out of yourself and break out of all of the rules of being a society member and becoming something like that?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I doubt it.
Why?
I doubt it. I feel like my upbringing and my thought process that I have today will always have me towing a line, will always have me either towing a line, following a line, staying on the line. I think that I'm just doing what I'm expected a lot of times.
Yeah.
And that has become my norm, whereas you see Arthur Fleck, as depicted by Phoenix, who all he's known is negative reinforcement. And you know how he's always mashing his head against something, or he's getting a hit in the face. Physical violence doesn't even mean anything to him. It's such a part of it that's where he'll stay. And seeing as how my experience has been almost exactly opposite of that, but in the same line, sort of confined, and you better you better be good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'm in any danger of becoming a criminal mastermind.
See, the first time I saw Fight Club, which was not all that long ago, and then now seeing Joker, it triggers that thing in my mind that just wants to lead some sort of rebellion, lead some sort of resistance, and as much as I can fantasize about doing that on a broad scale or a criminal scale or a violent scale, I sort of think we can do that in the way we live our normal lives, and this is how my weird mind works. I sort of compare leading a resistance and finally growing into your truth in that way, in the way that we can sort of buck traditions when it comes to public radio and when it comes to
Yeah.
classical music. Leave the charge of people who are going to do something and believe in something that is radically different than anything else that we've ever explored in that way.
I do agree with you in that it's like Fight Club in that the rebellion, the resistance, is made up of a whole bunch of low
The
wage workers,
outcasts,
right?
yeah,
The people who, like me, are towing a line.
low
Maybe
wage workers.
yeah, maybe they, or maybe they've been, maybe there's something in their past that's either physical or mental abuse that has them acting a certain way. But,
Yeah.
and that was one of the things that I thought Joker did really well was ratchet up. It's cumulative. By
Hmm.
the time you get to the end, you see everything that has gone into, and you can only go, yeah, that makes sense that he would act this way. Just thinking about the cognitive dissonance that happens, like when he was at the gate and realized that his mother lied to him that whole time.
Yeah.
Imagine finding out something that you believed from the time that you were a kid was just a flat out terrible lie.
Ooh, and that gets us into sort of today's topic. So we are going to speak with Jacob Dodd. He's music director at Pilgrim Baptist Church here in St. Paul, the state's oldest black church. And when you talk about something that you believed in so much and finding out that it was a lie, I instantly think of religion. And look, I know this is a difficult conversation for a lot of people. I'm not here to discredit or completely discount the tradition of religion. But for me, when I was 16 or 17 years old, when I start hearing the preacher at the church I grew up in the Church of Christ tradition. When I heard him start to talk about, the gays are going to hell and X, Y, and Z, I instantly thought, well, does Jesus love me?
Mhm.
Is this an all loving God? What does it mean for me to even be sitting in this room? And that eventually led me to, sort of abandoning the church and abandoning religion. Do you have any sort of experience along those lines? Did you grow up churchy at all?
Growing up, my dad was in the Air Force, so the family moved a lot and they never got involved in a congregation. And
Your
so
Lord and Savior, Uncle Sam.
yeah, and I grew up not going to church, and truth in advertising here, I have no I do not know the stories of the Bible, any parables.
Mm,
Mainly I've been going I went to church mainly for funerals and weddings
sure.
growing up. And then shortly after the election I did go to a Unitarian Universalist church for a little while, but
And you've talked about how, you had such visceral responses to the music you heard
it
during
was
those
amazing.
services.
It was absolutely amazing. And I was putting money in the collection plate, like it was a cover charge because I mean, they had several different choirs of various levels. They brought in guest artists, and it was an amazing experience on the music front. But
And it's easy to see an institution like the church you're talking about, in what's probably the richest part of the city of St. Paul, with all of these well-to-do members. No shade to any of them, just speaking to what I kind of noticed. And it
mhm,
was really, I was really quick to say, oh well, what is this organization doing for the community? They have all this money that helps further establish what they're doing. But I actually learned before we went to go see Joker. Actually, shout out to my friends Kevin and Jess. They attend that church as well, and they say that 20% of what's put in the offering plate every Sunday goes right out the door.
I really did like that about it, and there was always a part of I don't know what it's called. It's before the actual sermon, but um, where they talk about who the money is going to go to, and every single time that I was there, I was like, yeah, I'll give money to that.
Yeah.
That, it was some really uh, some groups that were really doing some good work.
Yeah. And then, just also the community aspect of it
There was that.
is so important for
I knew for at least that hour out of the week that people were going to be nice.
yeah.
So that was comforting.
Yeah. And I it's not lost on me that that comforting feeling is what keeps a lot of people in those organizations. So, shout out to everyone who goes to church, shout out to everyone who does not go to church. Go ahead.
Maybe a Unitarian Universalist church is more for you because, there's members of the LGBTQ community there. It's
More important than I need a gay church, I need a church rooted in more Black traditions, and that's what.
Yeah, you're not going to get that there.
And that's what was really moving to me about attending the service at Pilgrim Baptist was because so many of the songs I was familiar with, I felt like I was in a space in which I should be comfortable, I should be celebrated. Now, of course, me as a gay person, traditionally in those spaces, those aren't safe spaces. We'll get into that conversation here in a bit, but before we get into the conversation with Jacob Dodd, I just want to, make it clear to everyone listening that I respect personal traditions. I'm not here to, on what anyone thinks about, their relationship with a higher being. With all that being said, I'm speaking from my experiences, and I hope that we can have a really honest exploration of what is religion, what makes church music so moving and so important, and how all of this serves as an integral part of Black American history on,
Yeah.
on many different fronts.
Yeah.
So before we get into this sort of three-way conversation, Scott, that we had with Jacob Dodd, I thought we could listen to a little of one of my favorite gospel tunes. It was actually performed at the church service we went to at Pilgrim Baptist. The name of the tune is "What If God Is Unhappy?" This rendition of it by the University of Arkansas Inspirational Chorale under the direction of Dr. Jeffrey Murdoch.
What if God is not happy with our praise? What if He is not pleased with the words?
Amen. We are gathered here today to learn more about and to celebrate Brother Jacob Dodd from Pilgrim Baptist Church, music director there at Pilgrim Baptist Church. Jacob, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I met you for the first time when we did the Illharmonic show over in Minneapolis.
Yes.
Oh man, that was really something to me. But before we get into you and your job at Pilgrim Baptist, what was your takeaway from doing the Illharmonic show as the pianist for that gig?
It was a great breakthrough of music of the music and the culture that happens here in the Twin Cities. You don't really see a group of African Americans or people of color coming together
Mm-hmm.
to have and playing classical, first of all.
Right.
So you when you do see Black people or people of color that that are well versed in their instrument, it usually comes from their church background.
Right.
So it was also great to see that musicians that didn't necessarily come from that background, but probably from their public school or private lessons
Right.
or any other outlets like that, come together in that same aspect of of playing and playing secular music.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to find the nice word for it.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. No, it was it It was nice. It was a nice experience.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
a nice
And
experience.
for me, and Scott, we talk all the time about building community and that sort of thing. When I played that gig, what moved me so much was seeing all these black. Instrumental musicians that I had never met before here
Hmm.
in St. Paul,
Right.
and making those connections was very important for me. When I found out, Jacob, that you worked at such a historic institution here in the Twin Cities, I just knew I had to have you on Triloquy. So yeah, thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me
Breakthrough.
again. You better play.
I'm not a great organ player, but yeah. So first and foremost, you're from here in St. Paul, correct?
Yes, I was born here in St. Paul.
Talk to me about growing up as an aspiring musician here in St. Paul.
Well, okay. Technically, I was born here in St. Paul. I grew up in Woodbury, which is a suburb of St. Paul. It's more so on the east side.
Okay, you know Woodbury, I guess.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, so I went through all of my K through 12 education there. I went to Woodbury Elementary, junior high, and the high school.
Okay, shout out to Woodbury High.
Yeah, I know. Go Royals.
Okay,
Class
Royals.
of '09. It's been 10 years. So growing up in the suburbs in that environment, it's very interesting. Every time I'm asked this question, it's always a journey because my environment is truly a journey. It wasn't really consistent
Sure.
or the typical like, oh, I see where you get that from. People really don't recognize, or the dialect. They always try to figure me out. Like,
Okay.
what is it? What is it? I have a strong Southern background because both of my parents came from Belzoni, Mississippi.
Okay.
So that's in the Delta, way up north in the state of Mississippi. There,
What's the
catfish capital of the world.
well? What's the nearest bigger town to that place?
The capital is Jackson.
Oh, so it's outside of Jackson.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's about an hour north of Jackson.
Okay,
Yes.
I got you. Because I grew up in Memphis, so
Okay. Yeah, that's not
North
too far.
Mississippi is yeah. I know
I
Tunica and
feel
all
like
those places.
Memphis is like Jackson times 3.
Oh yeah. We'll have to get into that.
Oh, yes,
But
yes,
but
for
you
sure.
got but you have strong Southern ties, and that kind of followed you up here to St. Paul as you were growing up.
Yeah, yes, for sure.
N-
Um, in a musical aspect, I didn't get into private lessons right away.
mhm.
I started teaching myself um piano. I had this old school Miracle piano self-teaching software growing up in my earlier years, and that's how I, learn melodic dictation, rhythmic
Mm,
dictation, and all those things
yeah.
without me even realizing it at the time. I was just following the picture and try to play it in time. That was my understanding of it back then. So um, when I first got into lessons, that was into my fifth grade, year in
And,
elementary.
and
So
as far as piano, that's late as far as a lot of
yes,
people are
yes,
concerned.
for
Fifth, sixth
sure.
grade, yeah.
Yeah, so that's when I started to take more formal lessons around that time. Then after that, my parents realized I started to get a little bit too advanced because I went to a music conservatory in Woodbury. It
Hmm.
was just a local music school. It was offered, and at the time, that's all my parents knew about. But then I was offered to take more advanced lessons at McPhail Center for Music.
Oh yeah.
So in Minneapolis, it was now I'm old school, so it's not where it's at now. It's on Second Street or something like that. No, it was off of LaSalle and 11th
Okay.
in downtown Minneapolis. So that's under the direction of Yaakov Gelfand.
Amen.
So he's really hardcore. But that's where I started to develop my technical skills in a classical right.
Yeah.
And then also growing up in Pilgrim now, in regards of Pilgrim Baptist Church, I'm a baby. I'm a Pilgrim Baptist Church native.
Okay.
I've been going there ever since I was, I was.
That's your church.
Yeah, that's my church.
Yeah.
Yeah. So growing up, I was a part of the children's choir, the cherubim choir, the youth and teen choir. At the time it was called Spirit of Christ. And then as I was getting older, and at the same time I was getting into my lessons at the same in that same time frame, the congregation found out, so they definitely took advantage. So
The church
I,
mothers have a
yeah,
way of spreading
yes,
word.
oh yes, yes sir, yes sir. Um, uh, there was one day we do Wednesday night Bible study,
Hmm.
and before we disperse into classes, we have a small time to do praise and worship,
Sure.
and that's when they just put me to the piano. I was like, okay, play this hymn. I haven't read it. I haven't,
You were
you
thrown
know,
right
my
in.
sight reading. Again, all these terminologies, and I didn't know all that back then. I was trying to sight read and play by ear. I also play by ear as well. I've perfect pitch. So even if I didn't know the song, like I tried to figure it out as I was playing it. So um and if you ask any other type of church musician, that's usually how you start.
Yeah.
They just throw you in there, just like you throw a child uh, into a pool, and then they just figure it out from there.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And that's what, and Scott, that's so interesting for me to hear about because we spend so much time focusing in on the classical training and the classical technique about the music we spend so much time talking about. But,
Hmm.
there are just as many important and all too useful skills on the other end when you're talking about sight reading and playing by ear and just,
And feeling it, yeah.
yeah, and feeling is definitely, probably the most important part of the music,
yes,
That's the thing. I'm sorry, go
no,
ahead.
I'm sorry. That was, and that's the big thing about church music. Like you have to be fully engaged the whole time.
Right.
Mhm.
That's music for sure. Yeah, that's there. That's already expected. But engagement. I don't know if you saw me. I was making sure I was eye contact with my drummer,
Yeah.
my bassist, and the organist.
Yep.
So it's intense contact all the time. It's not just one moment like here's a song and then that's it. There are times where there music isn't necessary during the sermon, but towards the end when the pastor gets too a little bit happy, that's when the organ chords start coming in. Amen, amen. Yes. Um, so
I mean, because as I was sitting in the pew watching you, I was joking, and saying the only thing it looks like you're not doing is telling your child to sit down, or from the back. You just had your eyes a little bit of everywhere. It was really incredible.
Yeah, when I was watching, I started thinking about the role that you play in the church is a lot like when a ballet company or a theater group works with a live orchestra because the conductor becomes a part of the production. And they're reacting to what's going on to maybe hold a phrase out a little longer or cut something short or something like that. So I respect the work that you do in that regard. But I'm curious, you said it's been 10 years since you've been in high school, so that makes you 28, 29 right now?
yes, yes.
Okay, so is that average for a church to have a young music director like that?
Um, in my experience, from what I've seen, yes. Uh, Music directors, a lot of them are young. A lot of them are young. Yes.
What do you bring to the table? What's your sensibility when you
Well,
come into?
how I became the music director.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in my upbringing in the church, I, you graduate from the children's choir, then go into youth choir. They're really, and then there sometimes, and well, most times in these days, there's a big generational gap. So the teenagers that were no longer children, they just, you just put them with the adult choir.
Right.
So that's when I learned about harmony. That was my biggest introduction to learning about harmony. But again, not internalizing it
Hmm.
as a musician. But they're learning about sopranos, altos, tenors, and bass sometimes, and the movement, like all voices are flowing this way. That the notes are directing are going up, or they're going down, and just and because I had that perfect pitch, I paid attention to those details. So I was just in it.
Hmm.
I was in that environment. So when it was time for me to direct, and then also knowing what note it is, knowing the key, and having that theoretical knowledge behind it. I started to practice that in my later high school years, under the direction of another a local gospel artist here named Sam Reeves.
Mm.
I played under him a few years.
Hmm.
Then, and even before that, he was an alumni at St. Olaf, I believe. His name was Keith McCutcheon. Those men were the ones that brought me, into that leading role musically,
Hmm.
and also vocally.
Now, you mentioned St. Olaf, a semi-local institution, but when it came time for you to go to college, I understand you went back down south to an
Yes, I did.
HBCU. I'm curious, I can't help but to think about the history of shout out your school of your college.
JSU, go Tigers.
Oh, you went to JSU.
Yes,
Oh,
Jackson
so we
State.
need to talk about the Southern Heritage Classic at some point
Oh,
because
yeah, for sure.
I usually root for TSU, but
Oh,
but
yes. That'll be for another time.
but yeah, we'll get into that another time. But I can't help but to think about the history behind an institution like JSU, matched with the history of Pilgrim Baptist. I mean,
Mhm.
it must have been such a beautifully cohesive and culminating experience for you
Mhm.
to attend a historically black school and
Mhm.
to take those skills and apply them at a historically black church.
Mhm. And vice versa,
Oh,
vice versa.
really?
Yeah, because that's what again. That's why I say I have an interesting upbringing, because in a suburban environment, it's usually not
Yeah.
African American influence. Um, coming from that, being around Woodbury, and then coming and then going to Jackson State, and also in a more urban city.
Mm-hmm.
There
No
there are a
shade,
lot
Jackson.
of factors of a culture shock.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, I adapted very well, because of what I carried in the culture from my church, from my home church in the black church, and then also what I've gained musically. I applied that into other aspects, like jazz, or just like doing a jam session with some classmates down at school too. So
Yeah, yeah, and from what I remember again from the Illharmonic performance, you seem very well versed in just about anything that the piano requires because those hip hop tunes were coming out your fingers like that was natural, and then of course what we heard on Sunday, and
yeah.
and you're also a phenomenal singer
Thank you.
behind the mic, just doing a little bit of it all. Um, one thing I want to bring up before I forget, there's so many. We use this word classical, and we're always, having the discussion: what is classical music? What
Hmm.
is classic to an experience? And I couldn't help but to feel that when I came into Pilgrim Baptist, because while I haven't regularly attended church services in so many years, so much of the tradition was just classic to my experiences.
Mm.
I knew all of the songs, all of the hymns. The way that you had the choir doing that hard two step during "What If God Is Unhappy with
Mhm.
Our Praise." I mean, I haven't seen a church sway like that in so long. It really sat down in my spirit. And when I think about again, that word classical, I can't help but to separate that experience from that. Have you ever thought about the relationship between, what is, called classical music, quote
Mm.
unquote, old white folks music versus the music that is classic to the members of your
Yeah.
congregation?
Oh, I like that perspective a lot because it they do both of them do share the that quality of being classic, not you know is just utilizing um the fundamentals that we all learn, in
Yeah.
in a classical setting, but for it to be expressed in a raw expression from a raw, Negro experience,
Yeah.
versus a raw conservatory experience,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a treat combining those two together.
Wow.
See, for me, though, it was a much different experience because I've only gone to church for weddings and funerals. And then I spent about 6 or 8 months going to Unity Unitarian Church, which was a very different experience. So for me, walking in and being Forrest Gump over there on the side a little bit,
I
I'm
forgot about that scene.
I'm wondering, I'm wondering, because talking about a culture shock, like you mentioned earlier when you went down to JSU. So, to be welcoming to new people and making sure that their experience is positive at Pilgrim, what sort of steps do you take to entice people to come or to hang on to new members?
Um, what I do, my biggest thing I tell my choir is to be organic, meaning to be intentional with what you're singing about and know what the message is saying. Now have purpose into what you're singing about over me telling you what correct note to sing.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's what's bringing people in authentically. So it's not a gimmick. It's not anything to you know to trick you. It's something. We're coming we're coming in as we are, just how you are. We're just in that we're in that position to be welcoming, just as anyone else would want to feel.
Yeah, and there's definitely no denying that we were made to feel very welcome, all the way.
Yeah.
They have people at the front door to handing you all kinds of paperwork
Oh,
and
I
stuff.
walked out
And
with a calendar.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, well, it was
The
really blessed.
Urshers.
Yeah, amen, amen. The Urshers. You used the word authentic, and I want to get into that a little bit more because. The service began, with a testimony. Tell us your good news,
Mhm.
and I will never forget. And you probably know this sister's name, but a woman stood up to talk about her sore throat and how
Mhm.
that sore throat wasn't just going, it wasn't going anywhere. And her son brought some lemons, and she made some tea, and her sore throat went away. And I felt like my throat felt a little better after hearing that story. And you could just tell that she was authentically talking to folks that she considers family, just about
Yes.
some of her good
Yes.
news, and I just felt that spirit of as you say, authenticity and coming as you are. One thing I
Mhm.
was worried about, and we talk about this in classical music all the time. What do I wear? What do I need to wear? And so I decided I didn't want to go full Easter Sunday with my bow tie and everything. But there were people there dressed all different kind of ways. If I can say anything about the service beyond how phenomenal the music is, it's definitely the congregation definitely offers a feeling of you are welcome here. But the reality is a lot of people just don't feel welcome or
Mhm.
feel comfortable in church. What can you say to the person who just feels like they'll walk in and be
Some
judged?
preconceived
Yeah. What
notions.
what what do you tell that person who might be interested in visiting Pilgrim Baptist?
Um, just come.
Yeah.
Just come. Um, as cliche as it may sound, not all churches are the same, and but that isn't to negate, the reality of one's experience of the church of there's a reason why people have those preconceived notions,
Mhm.
but there's also another side where you can just give it another try.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's that. Again, um, just to continue to be open and accessible and available, and that's all that I can offer.
Yeah, yeah. Because, Scott, we were kind of, and I'm interested to hear your take on this. We were having a conversation about, that feeling of being, visibly welcome, or like feeling like you fit in. And we kind of talked
Yeah, a
about
little bit.
how, yeah, go ahead.
That was interesting in the parking lot afterward because I thought all three of us had the same experience.
Yeah.
Because it was very welcoming, Jacob. And I was one of maybe half a dozen white people in the church, a couple of them in the choir, and
Yeah,
and
doing that two-step hard along
yeah,
with everybody else.
and
Amen.
and I felt welcome, and I thought, okay, it's a peaceful place, a welcoming place, and then Garrett started talking about Corinthians in the parking lot. So here I was, a white person in a largely black congregation, and I felt welcome despite the fact that I didn't look like everybody else. But Garrett looks like everybody else, and yet he felt a certain way because of the fact that he's a gay man. And
And that I brought my boyfriend up in there.
yeah,
So, there's always that fear of, well, am I going to be shamed in front of everybody? Am I creating tension by being here? It just, sure, it gets back to those preconceived notions, but
Hmm.
having grown up in the church, that's one of the things that kind of pushed me away. I just felt like I wasn't, very welcome. I'm curious, how do, from, and obviously I'm not asking for you to speak for Pilgrim Baptist, but
Hmm.
just, from where you sit in that congregation, how are, difficult questions and difficult conversations like that explored, if at all?
Um, all I can say is that we do have a few gay members,
Oh, wow.
in the church. And I haven't really taken the time to, to say like, how do you really feel? Like I
Hmm.
see you here, but
But they're openly and outwardly gay in the on
hmm
the okay.
yeah. So and even some they're active with the youth as
Sure.
well. So again, I haven't seen that mistreatment, or we don't um I haven't seen anyone feel outcasted.
Mm,
Well, and then again, those are inward feelings, so we can't really tell
yeah.
if that's happening or not.
Of course. And just the that makes me feel good to hear that. But just when I think about, just how strong of a community that is, and again, Scott, we kind of talked about this with Vanessa when you were talking about Beyonce's Homecoming,
yeah.
and that envy of that community, and that unity. There is something, and maybe envy is an inappropriate word, but there is something I envy about being a part of an institution like that. When I sat in the pews and just looked around, it looked like I was sitting inside of, a national treasure, a black artifact
Mhm.
of Minnesota, something that I wanted to be a part of. But there's always that feeling of, do I really belong here? Am I welcome here? Am I creating problems within this space?
And for me, I think I might have been in a Baptist church maybe one other time in my life,
Hmm.
and it is a different experience. The music is more a player in it. When the sermon was going on, you have a gentleman over at the organ, and he's doing some flourishes and things
Right.
like that. And I maintained to Garrett that I don't think it would have been as effective without the organ, giving you a surge here and there, or as a as a
Yes, yes.
as
Come
a
on, come on.
punctuation.
That's right,
And
amen.
and in all of the churches that I've ever been to, not one time has anyone ever went, yes.
Hmm.
In the congregation,
And it
I
was
mean.
much more than just yes.
Right,
It was amen. It was
or
preach, preacher. It was,
well,
yep.
that was
Hmm.
another one. So this was
Hmm.
a different experience, and yet I still never really felt like I was on the outside of it, though. I mean, it was just like, oh, This is something brand
It's
new.
just outward.
Yeah.
You have that space to express how those words hit you.
And I guess what I would come back to is that I want to feel something that strongly. I wish that I felt that strongly in that environment.
I mean, yeah, it's it's a really challenging conversation for me again because having gone through what I went through growing up, in the church. I'm of the excuse me, I'm of the Church of Christ tradition. So, there were just so many rules and it was so rigid. There wasn't
Hmm.
even instrumental music in the church I grew up in because of, whatever, whatever reason that is.
Yeah.
And it just, yeah.
How do you how do you fight somebody that comes in with a preconceived notion? How do you combat that when if somebody has it in their mind that it's going to go a certain way and they might be wrong?
What I'll personally say to that is um that I feel like that's one of the ways to probably not feel because you're already putting those notions in your head.
Hmm.
So that's why I said earlier, just come and try.
Yeah.
Just try again because it may not be what you expect it to be,
Yeah.
despite your experience. Because now if it was the same church and someone treated you wrong in that church, and then you go back, to that same church, then I don't know about that,
Right.
but
Right. Right.
but coming from one church, if one church treated you bad, then you try a different church. I feel like just keep trying.
Mm.
Just keep trying to find that place that makes you feel welcome.
And I'm really encouraged by that because what you're saying really makes me want to go back. And I remember, and I guess your dad is also involved in the
Yes,
church.
yes.
Yeah, so
You probably heard die.
yeah, yeah. And it seemed like every time he got to the microphone, he was like, "Look, I know it's not my time. I didn't come here to preach to y'all today." But one of the things he said in that mini sermon that is kind of reminding me of what we're talking about now. Your dad was talking about. How important the youth programs are, and how important it
Yes.
is to engage young people in this tradition. And we talk about the same thing all the time in classical music.
Hmm.
How do you get kids to listen to classical music where there's movie music, there's video game music, well, whatever different things we'll think of.
Hmm.
What in your experience, from your perspective, what are some of the techniques that need to be used by churches and religious organizations to kind of get in and involve young people to make them feel like they're a part of this?
So you're asking, what can church music offer to classical?
Or what can church and church music offer to young people to get them involved with with church and get them coming and get them singing in the choir and going on these
Mm.
retreats and all that different things,
Hmm.
all that different
Hmm.
stuff.
Hmm. Again, it's to be accessible because the big thing that you do hear from the youth they is that they don't feel like they're being spoken to. It's like, again, going back to the the generational gap. They definitely notice that there isn't anything for them. So that's why my father, is fighting hard to keep the youth active in something, to go on retreats, to ask them, what would they like to see, and things like that. But one of the main things that we do is to keep it real, especially with the kids, but also use scripture to back up, those those conversations. So that's what those youth retreats are for, is to um help them be to have the mindset that they need, to move forward, to have the faith that they're looking for, whatever that is, so
Yeah.
but we offer, that Christian path, and that perspective.
Yeah.
So to get those kids is that to keep them active and to keep them interested and engaged is you got to meet them where they are first. Right. So that's what you have to get to know. You don't have to do any, again, you don't have to try you do any of these gimmicks. You just have to be open, like hello, like a simple hello, just means a lot, because a lot of youth, don't feel seen unless they're doing something wrong, like
Mm.
take off your hat, put on, or like your
Pull up your
skirts.
pants. Yeah.
Like that. That's the only attention that that they feel like they're getting, in the church. So we dismantle those man-made philosophies and rules that churches make. That's the first thing that we do is to leave it all open for for the youth to express themselves. So
Yeah.
they want to, they don't, so it could, because you had a question like, what should I wear?
Yeah.
Like, the youth, we're working on youth, and you don't worry about what you need to be wearing, because when you get to your final destination, like, you're not gonna be worried about what you're wearing.
Sure. Amen. 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 As long as that robe is white. Amen. It's so funny that and we need to wrap up here, but it's so funny, Jacob, that you talk about not being noticed unless you're doing something wrong, because Scott, that was a main theme in Joker. As we were
Right.
talking about earlier, how the main character just finally felt like he was who was never being seen for doing the
see
right
that.
thing. Have you seen that yet?
I'm very interested in seeing.
Yeah, we
that.
saw it last night. It was great. So, Jacob, thank you so much for being here. If anybody is interested in learning more about you, learning more about Pilgrim Baptist Church, how can they find that information?
You can reach out to me on my Instagram or a Facebook page. Facebook, Jacob Dodd, Jacob Dodd, or on Instagram, Showpin. That's a play with words to spell Chopin.
Chopin.
Yeah, I get it.
Chopin
Okay.
underscore 3.
Okay. Chopin
And then
underscore
to
So there
three.
were
learn
two
more
others.
about
Yeah.
yes, and to learn more about Pilgrim Baptist Church, you can just go to their website at pilgrimbaptistchurch.org.
Okay. Amen. Jacob, you have been so encouraging me today. I think that I will return to Pilgrim Baptist. I didn't do the little mini meeting with the preacher when we visited last time, but I think I'll do that this time. I
Okay.
mean, just to be a part of such an important Black institution that has so much history and so much phenomenal music
Some
directed by
amazing
you.
music. Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
I
much.
mean, it's really incredible. So thank you so much for being here. It's
Thanks
really
for
been an
having
honor.
me.
Yeah.
Very humbled.
So, Scott, on the next opus of Triloquy is going to be even spookier than the thought of going to church for the first time in many years.
That's the Triloquy Spooktacular.
That's coming up next time here on Triloquy. And remember, if you want to reach out to us, be sure to send us a note at triloquy@americanpublicmedia.org. That's TRILLOQUY at americanpublicmedia.org. Be blessed.